everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I decided to come on here. I was getting some things potted up and I was doing a quick Instagram video, but I figured it was worth coming on here to show you exactly what I am doing. So as you can see here, I have some plants that have been in water propagation for quite a while, and you can see they have some nice established roots. And so what my plan to do today is to pot up those propagations that have significant amount of roots so that I can put more cuttings into my propagation bottles. So if you would like to see how to transition your cuttings, your rooted cuttings from water propagation to being potted up in the soil, please stick around. So as you can see, these three here across the front, I already took out of the water and started to pot up. I started that over on Instagram. But starting from the left side here, that philodendron Brazil was in this little jar of water here, and in the center, that's the Cebu blue pothos, and that was inside this water here. I'll try to insert a picture of what the roots looked like, but they had very significant roots. They've been in there for a while. And then last over here on the end, this long vine here is philodendron micans, and it was in a glass bottle like back there. So essentially what you want to remember when you are moving your propagations, your rooted cuttings from water to soil, is that water roots are different from soil roots. If you notice, these roots here, they're more thin, kind of translucent. These are what your typical water roots will look like. If you've ever repotted one of your plants from soil, you'll notice that the roots are thicker. Some of them can be white, some of them can be a little bit of a darker color, but there's definitely a significant difference. So with that being said, your water roots have to get used to soil. So what some people will do is take the water propagation bottle here. Imagine it still has the slowly add soil to the water while the roots are still in there so they can get used to being in soil, and then they'll go from there to putting it into the soil. I personally don't do that, and I'm just going to show you what I do. So as I was saying, when I first got on here, one of the mistakes I made was taking the cuttings from the water, putting them into soil, and having them be in too big of a pot. This pot in the center is a 3-inch pot, but that plant had the roots were like over 6 inches long. They were really long. The two small guys on the end are in this little 2-inch terracotta pot. The roots on those were between, I say about 3 inches, about the length of my finger. So actually the micans vine, the roots were about 5 to 6 inches, but it was one single long strand of roots versus the Cebu, which had a big bunch of roots. So I still wanted to put that in here. So with that being said, you have this 2-inch size terracotta pot, which I think is the perfect way to transition from the water to the soil, because the mistake that I made previously putting it in too big of a pot is once you wet the soil, even though it's a well draining soil, the roots get overwhelmed and with the water, and then they can rot. So I wanted to start off smaller and see if I get how much of a difference that I get from that. So I'm going to turn you around over here. I have on my daughter's old high chair a little makeshift potting station. So I have some soil and perlite mixed up right there, and I'm going to go ahead and take out one of these cuttings. So as you can see here, this cutting, this is another micans cutting. It has pretty significant roots. These again, I would say are about 5 to 6 inches, but as you can see, they're very, very thin and very delicate. So I'm gonna take this cutting, which is putting out new leaves and is doing very well in the water, and I'm gonna place it into this pot with some soil. So what I like to do is take a little bit of soil and put it at the bottom. Now this pot is small, so you're not gonna need to do to put a lot. And then I go ahead and take the roots and I just make sure they all get down into the pot. Hold the plant upright, and then it's gonna backfill the rest of the plant. If you're new to my channel, I have 2 toddlers, so they like to make noise as soon as mommy turns on the camera. So if you hear anything to that effect, that is my kids playing in the background. So I go ahead and backfill, give it a little push down. You don't want to I don't like to overly push down the soil when I'm potting. I feel like it gets too compact even with the perlite and everything in there. This soil mix, by the way, is Scott's potting soil. It already had some perlite in there, but I added extra perlite as I like to do to my mix. When I'm doing my normal repotting, I do add a little orchid bark. However, I repotted a couple big items recently, and so I'm out of that. But I felt like this was significant for what I'm doing here. So you have that in there, give it a little tap. And now here you have this potted up cutting of your philodendron micans, and it's all set to go. So I'm gonna put that over here, and I have one more I'm gonna pot up with you guys as well. You can see this here is another cutting. This may be a couple cuttings actually of philodendron Brazil. And as you can see, very significant roots, but again, very thin, almost hair-like. So we're gonna put it into another small pot as well. Now this is my first time adding cuttings to these size pots, so I'm not exactly sure how long I'll leave them in there. I'll just monitor them to see how they are doing, and then I'll kind of decide from there when I want to transfer them over to a bigger pot. So here's a close-up of those roots for you. Now this is a part of this right here. I should have cut differently. This just a quick, I'll do a separate video if you like, about for beginners on how to know where to cut to propagate. But this is called a node. This is where your new roots will grow from. So I could have cut in between here and here and put that down in, and this separately would have grown roots, but I probably was trying to keep a little bit of a vine. So anyhow, here's that cluster of roots. Again, these are longer, but I think this will still be fine for this little pot. So we're gonna go ahead and do like we did last time. Put a little bit in the bottom. Some people cover the hole in the bottom with mesh, or I've seen people use fabric sheets or something like that. I don't particularly cover it. So that's that. But I do put in a I just put the soil in, is what I'm trying to say. I put them on top of a tray, so I feel like they're okay. As far as, now, this is a perfect example, and I'm kind of glad this happened. If you look here, I would say that this isn't exactly going to work for this, because you can see, this is obviously where the soil line would be. I have roots up here. So, I'm going to take that out and see what best decision to make with these. What I'm thinking is, since the roots are coming from up here, this is basically, it's not dead, but this is basically wasted, just lost stem. If there's no nodes here, nothing's going to grow from that. And as well over here, you can see this portion and this portion. So what I'm going to do is go in and trim those portions of stem that are not going to produce any roots. And then I'm going to come back and show you and see if at that point it will fit in that smaller pot, or if I need to get a different type of pot. So I'm going to trim those. So I'm back. All I did, as you can see, is I snapped those. You can see them sitting down right there. I just snapped that extra little piece off. Careful not to disturb the node. And those actually, those actually should have been cut shorter when I first put them into propagate, but that's okay. So as you can see here, I maintained the point that has the roots, but I got rid of that extra stem. And I just snapped it off. You can use shears. I just snapped it off. with my hand. When you use shears, it's important to, let's dump some of this out so I can get them in there. When you use shears, it's important to clean them because you can pass germs from, well, you know, germs, disease. You can pass those from plant to plant by using the shears. So, yeah, that is perfect. That's exactly what we needed to do. In this instance, like I said, cutting those extra stems off was fine because it was below the node. You can see the one, this one started to turn brown. You can see that it was just gonna rot. So when you have these stretches of stem, it's just supposed to cut them off. But like I said, let me know in the comments if you want to see a video of how to you take cuttings to propagate. Because I know when I was first starting to do it and I was looking for videos, they had ones that were, I guess, for a little more advanced. It's not a hard thing to do at all, but when it's your first time doing it, you kind of want, like, you know, like the basics. I don't want to say dumbed down, but you want it to be spelled out for you, you know? So let me know if you want that a video like that. I can do that because I think that'll be helpful. So again, give it a little push just to make sure the plant is stable in there, and then backfill where I need to. Give it a tap, make sure it settles in there. Push that in, and then there you have it. There is that philodendron micans cuttings. And here again is another example of a stem that's not gonna really do anything. I just take my fingers and I get rid of it like that. And this actually has a potential to put out a root. If you have a node that is out like this and not in soil, what it'll do, you can kind of see there, it'll push out aerial roots. It uses those roots to climb. Any trailing plant is also a climbing plant, and so they produce aerial roots that they use to climb. So here we have that one. And let me see. This is an example of one that I would say is not ready to pot up. Somebody gave me this. It's a cutting of Monstera ansonii. It was on a really long stem, and you see these bumps right here are nodes. I could have trimmed here, but it was a node down here as well, so I just plopped it in the water, and you can see right here it has this little bit of a root. I wouldn't put this in soil yet, even in those small pots, because from past experience, I've seen that it'll just rot. So I'm gonna leave this in the water. It had another leaf coming off of it, but that leaf rotted off. So I'm just gonna stick this buddy back in and see what happens. But yeah, so when you have a root that's kind of like this, you wanna leave it. But when you have roots like those other ones I showed you, my suggestion would be to go ahead and pop them in the water. So here is a shot of all of the water propagations that I was able to place into soil. Again, we have the Cebu pothos, we have the Philodendron Brazil, and then we have two vines of the Philodendron micans. If you would like me to do, actually, I think I'm going to do a separate video because I get a lot of questions about the micans. I leave my vines long because I like the trailing look, but it's several more cuts that could be made into this to make a bushier pot versus a long trailing pot. And so I can do a video to talk about that as well. So thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments down below, do you prefer to propagate in water for a while to get your roots and then place it into soil, or do you prefer to put your cuttings straight into soil? I know some people do that. I personally prefer water propagation. I think it works very well. I've only had less than a handful of instances where the stem actually rotted and didn't take root, but I think it works very well. And also I think it's cool to see the roots grow in the clear bottles. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.